if you wanted to wait. Hello, beautiful humans. Oh, you guys can see I got blood work done today. So you guys can see that on my arm right now. That's cool. But hello, beautiful humans. Welcome to another stream of Teach Jenn Tech. And we have a returning guest. Yay. Ben is back to talk about accessibility, which I'm excited about because it's been stuck in my head and I get yelled at by bots. So, Ben, please introduce yourself and what you're going to teach us today.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you on your blood, in fact, working. It's good to hear that your blood does work.
Yes.
Yeah. Howdy. I'm Ben. I blog about accessibility occasionally. I stream about accessibility far more often. And maybe that's the world's shortest introduction to me. I host a weekly show where I bring on guests to teach me something about accessibility and web development and just building great user experiences for the web. So this is my second time on. The first time, we kind of talked about accessibility like very, very broadly, I feel like. We talked about, and just like minutes before the show, I mentioned in the green room that I'm going to have you do part of this introduction as well. But we talked about, kind of the wide, diverse spectrum of disability that exists. And we talked about just some ways in which disability can impact your experience with the web. It sounds like that's been stuck in your craw just a bit over the past month, right?
Yes.
So I would love if you could just kind of talk me through some of the takeaways you've had and some of the things you've learned and been thinking about in the kind of vein of accessibility over the past month or so.
I would say one of the biggest things is remembering to do alt text for images. And there's a bot on Twitter that likes to yell at me when I don't put it on there, which I think is really helpful because it's a helpful reminder to put alt text. The thing that I have found frustrating is the fact that you can't go back and update alt text after Twitter has been posted. And that's really frustrating because if it's not something I always think of, but then I'm like, oh, I should have done that. Whoops. And I can't go back. And by alt text, just for that clarification for the viewers of it is, let's see if I can describe it. It is in a text box that is associated with an image to describe an image to someone that may not be able to see it.
Yeah. We'll actually get to see some effects of that today, I think.
Yes.
But yeah.
And the other part that's been really stuck with me is contrast.
Yeah.
Don't know. Like that just really stuck with me about like contrast and being able to like, are these going to be good pairings? And it's interesting to me because I feel like I've always been very, very curious about the fashion world and like colors that go together or don't go together or patterns. And it's interesting of how much that goes into like the videography world. So like if for anyone about to do like go on a show or something, you don't want to use wear like very small squares or stripes or stuff like that. It can really mess up the way the video picks you up on the for the image. But then also it's like so much deeper than that when it's about websites. And I was like really stuck with me because I'm like, I never realized how much accessibility can go into all these other avenues than just like the web.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where conventional wisdom can be wrong, where in web, like we've seen time and time again the like kind of trend towards minimalism, right? Show as few things as possible and see if you can kind of tuck away, hide the things that you don't think people should care about, right? But what that leads to is, oh, well, the bits we want to hide, maybe we'll put this in a really, really light gray so that it doesn't stand out, Yay, minimalism. And maybe for someone with standard visual perception abilities, it's still totally like feasible to read that text. But for anyone with impacted vision in some way, right? You've just introduced like extra barriers, extra struggle there, right?
Mhm.
And we've got kind of this baseline assumption, this default assumption of who we think is using our page, and very rarely do those assumptions actually include disability.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so a lot of how I see accessibility work is about kind of bashing in the assumptions we make about our users, right? You and I, like, I'm not, or I guess I don't want to like presume too much about your vision, but like, I can look at something and go, this is plainly readable, right? Sure, that's a
Mhm.
light gray, but like, I can plainly read it, right?
Mhm.
But I'm not, if I'm doing that, I'm not taking into account people who, might have been colorblind from birth or might have developed cataracts. Even just
Right.
as you, like a thing I learned earlier today, like as you age, some of the cones in your eyes become less sensitive. And this actually shifts your perception of color over time away from like your ability to like perceive like reds and whatnot.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we have a lot of these like built-in assumptions about our users and how they navigate the web. Accessibility is about like kind of breaking in the door and like recognizing that this isn't a hypothetical. We have users who experience the web differently than we do, and they have every right to experience the web and have access to the web. So that's some of what a lot of what we're going to focus on today is this concept of an assistive technology, which is I would define it as for the purposes of this conversation, a piece of hardware, software, or operating system level setting that disabled people can use to better facilitate navigating their device, navigating the web, etc.
I dig it. And I I I don't want to go in and rehash this from last episode. We did talk about like a lot of different disabilities and how they may show up.
Mhm.
And for those watching today, like I would challenge you to just be open to what we're talking about today, but then also be open to, is that something that would help your own life?
Mhm.
So instead of going through, well, this is for this exact disability or anything like
Yeah.
that, there, um, it can be so helpful in many other ways too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, kind of the first place I want to start is with keyboard navigation, because this is one of those things that a lot of people benefit from keyboard navigation. Awesome. Yes, you've got the demo I sent over. Cool. So, um, keyboard navigation is really helpful, especially if, for instance, you can't use a mouse. So that could be, for instance, people with mobility disorders such as like arthritis or Parkinson's, for instance, like people who might struggle with the precision control that a mouse might require. Um,
Mhm.
you think about it like a mouse cursor is like the cursor itself is something floating around this intangible two-dimensional plane. A mouse cursor is not a very helpful model for people who are blind, for instance, or have a high degree of vision impairment.
Mhm.
And so keyboard navigation also impacts people with visual disabilities as well. And even just, you know, uh, I think we talked about the curb cut effect last time. This idea that like disability accommodations can benefit non-disabled people as well. Like
Mhm.
if one of your hands is occupied, say maybe you're a parent holding your newborn, right? You might not have ready access to your mouse, and so it might just be easier to use your keyboard. Keyboards are also like keyboard navigation is hugely impactful for power users of technology. You find that the better you get with computers, you tend to just be able to do things faster with the keyboard than you would with the mouse. So lots of people benefit from keyboard navigation. You've probably already started incorporating, if you're a developer or even just kind of tangentially in this space, you've probably already begun incorporating keyboard navigation techniques into your uh, your just experience of the web. So we're going to practice a few things that you can do with keyboard navigation. And Jenn, I want to start with what your baseline knowledge is. So what are some keys you can use or some ways you can use your keyboard to navigate a site?
I'm the first thing that comes to mind is the search function on Mac, which is the command space by default,
Okay.
meaning that, and I say it that way because I don't know where half the stuff is on my computer.
Yeah.
And without that, I would not know how to use the calculator on my computer or search different things. And it can search, my documents. It can bring it
Mhm.
up online. It is something that I use on a regular basis. Um, Also, another keyboard shortcut that I use on my computer is something that I set up with Snagit,
Okay.
which is able to take screenshots. And it's like if being able to do that and multitask. Um, when I hear like full keyboard things, it makes me start thinking of macros.
Okay.
And I don't know anything about that. To I've always been like, that's cool, but those are
Yeah.
ones that come to mind. I realize that I'm probably using more than I realize.
Sure, absolutely. So we're going to talk about keyboard shortcuts that are like built into the browser, but I wanted to circle back to the Mac feature that you were talking about, which is called Spotlight Search, which is when you do command space. If you think about it, that's an assistive technology, right? Jenn, pardon me if I'm wrong, but you're open about having like ADHD, right? You have,
Oh yeah, I'm
yeah,
ADHD. I'm dyslexic.
okay. I want you to
Like,
consider this. I want you to consider the Spotlight search an ADHD assistive technology, because a thing that I have noticed is like for folks with ADHD, right? Is like having like a rigid organization is not always helpful, right? Like you don't necessarily know where you put things, and having a directory structure where you have to like specifically hunt down, oh, I put this file in this folder, in this folder, in this folder.
yeah, I never
It's
remember.
yeah, it's the Spotlight search allows you to treat your entire file system as a Doom pile, a Doom drawer.
Yes. For those listening, a doom pile or a doom drawer, when associated with ADHD, is many individuals with ADHD really struggle with executive, oh, what is it called? Executive function, I believe, where basically you might want to clean everything, but it doesn't necessarily make sense where you would put it. So you end up piling it all together where it's cleaned up, but it's a doom pile. It goes there. You don't know where else it's going to go. So it's just going to go there. And
Yeah, it's
it's
out of the way, right? But it's
right.
not necessarily like, a neurotypical person's not going to look at this and go, I see the Dewey Decimal System you've implemented here. It's
Yes.
just kind of
Yes.
all the things in a mishmash.
And that is honestly how I think that is a great way of describing how my computer set up. That is how
Mhm.
my life is set up. And it's not
Yeah.
something that I'm like consciously going, oh yes, let me do that because that sounds cool. It is honestly, and now that you mention it, I lose graphics on my computer all the time unless I
Mhm.
just leave them in my download folder. If
Yeah.
they're not in my download folder, I'm like, I don't know what I called that
So
or where I put it.
So this gets to, even before we get to keyboard navigation, this gets to something I want to emphasize, which is just about anything can be an assistive technology, right? We're not talking about necessarily things you have to purchase or things that have the
Mhm,
accessibility label on it, right?
mhm.
Another thing that I want to consider in this camp of assistive technology is password managers like LastPass or 1Password or anything like that, because and an upcoming standard of the web content accessibility guidelines that I think is supposed to be made official in December actually has like an accessibility requirement for websites to not break password manager functionality, because remembering passwords, secure passwords, is what we consider a cognitive function, and that can be especially difficult for people with memory issues. And so,
I'm I'm just
yeah.
laughing because I literally to get into an account like Google, it locks me out and I have to
Mhm.
reset the password. I've reset my passwords on almost everything so often
Mhm.
that it is because of Google's backup security of like allowing you by like if you have it on your phone or something, that has caused me to not get completely locked out of all of my systems.
Mhm.
And a password manager would be phenomenal. I should actually look into that.
Yeah, and it is. I don't think a password manager was built with specifically disabled people with like memory issues or ADHD in mind,
Right.
but it's a powerful tool for that. And the impact that it has is like it's a disparate impact where it benefits everyone. Like seriously, if you don't have a password manager, like get a password manager today. But it especially benefits people with cognitive disabilities in a very real way. Another
Mhm.
person that it might benefit is someone who needs to use voice control. You can
Mhm.
imagine having to announce your password aloud with voice control. A is unreliable because we know how good voice control is, like it's
Mhm.
messy. And B, it's insecure because if you have to do that when you're in public, like you've just absolutely neutered the security of your password. Um,
And I think that's another one that you mentioned about accessibility as well is using voice to text. That is something I use all of the
mhm,
time. And I could see how difficult, I know how annoying it is when it doesn't work. But being
yeah,
able to have to do that for your password, I could, I would become livid at technology. Technology and I fight sometimes.
absolutely. And so assistive technology is just anything that a disabled person needs to use or can use to better facilitate their like ability to navigate their devices or navigate the web.
Yeah.
And so yeah, let's actually get to keyboard navigation. But I think that this has been a very valuable segue because like or detour, that's the word, because it really hits something home about just the like variety of assistive technologies that are out there and even just the like perhaps necessity of what we like necessity of creativity in what we consider assistive tech. So
Right. Right.
yeah. All right. So in the browser, we have a few very standard means of navigating a page with the keyboard. So the first one that I want to talk through, actually, I want to see if there's a way to open up in that code sandbox, if there's a way to open it up just so that you can just see the page. I
Um,
think you see that like jklvhv .csv.app. If you just open that up in a new,
oh, thank
yeah.
you. I was like, I
Oh,
don't
sorry.
know where I'm
Yes.
looking.
Yeah. Just remove the distractions. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
So this will make things easier.
Let me
So
make this
this is
bigger.
just a yeah. Thank you. This is just a simple form. I have done nothing special here. I haven't done anything to like customize the keyboard experience. All of this is just baked into the browser.
Cool.
So we've got a couple links. So the first thing I want to introduce you to is the concept of focus. And focus we should think of as um, it's kind of like where the keyboard cursor is. The idea here is your keyboard will navigate between different interactive elements, different things that. Well, let's just see it. So the way to focus is you hit the tab key. So let's just hit tab, and you can see. Yep,
Yay. I went to a hyperlink.
you went to a hyperlink. Let's yeah, and let's just keep going.
Um, yay.
Okay, so what do you notice about this?
Um, that it does do that, but I'm like, I don't know how to. Oh, that was complicated. So I went to developer to see if there were other job titles, and I hit enter just
Yeah.
because I was like, I would have to click it to see the other options, but it's actually
Mhm.
a down option, a down button instead
Down
of
works. Space also works, I think.
okay.
Important thing to keep in mind: these elements are all part of a form, and in a form context, enter always means submit.
That's fair. And so it's just more of like 1 to 3 years. All right. And then I don't know if shift tab works.
Shift tab
That
does work.
does.
Yeah, so shift tab is
Yay.
going to move you backwards in the focus order.
And then and submit.
Yeah.
That was fun.
And so this is the world's quickest demo, right? But what it hammers home is a few things. One, it hammers home, here's how you move the focus. It's tabbing, right? And one thing I want to point out is that only certain things were tabbable, right? Only certain things were focusable. And all of those things were interactive in some way, right? So our heading, our static text, even the labels for the different form fields, those weren't focusable. The only things that we could tab to were things that were interactive with the keyboard. And so with the hyperlinks, by the way, you could use, I want to say it's space. I could be very wrong. No, enter. It's enter. Okay.
I don't know. It's not opening it.
Yeah, I set the hyperlink to be basically blank, so it would just go to the same page. So that's poor demo part on poor demo on my part there. But yeah, and then enter, or sorry, the button is to activate the button. If you tab down to the button, you could do enter or space, I believe. So that's yeah. So broadly speaking, what we're doing here is we're tabbing between interactive things, and when we get to something like the select drop down for the job title, you're on the single element that is the select, right? That drop down. And to further interact with it, you have to use space or the arrow keys to make your selection there. And then when we got down to the radio buttons, can you tab down to the radio buttons for me again? A thing to note is that this whole thing, your focus currently seems to be on the radio button that says 0 to 1 in this case. But if you think about it, the focus is kind of bigger picture. It's really on this whole group of radio options, right?
Yeah,
you can't tab to each of them individually. You're using your arrow keys right now.
Right. And even if I go up and down, it's still the arrow keys. It's still only going within here instead of a tab or a shift tab that can go backwards.
Yeah. And that's something that one thing to point out, right? All of this stuff. If you go back to the code sandbox link, the where you can actually see the code, I want to indicate something here. When we look at the HTML, I haven't added any JavaScript. All I've done is I added some CSS, but all I've done is implemented everything in good semantic HTML. So semantic HTML, or you'll sometimes hear it called semantic markup, is this notion that we are using elements that best describe the expected behavior, functionality, meaning, and stuff like that. And the browser will take care of the functionality for us. So the fact that we implemented things as a select with options meant that we got that drop-down behavior for free. The fact that we implemented, input fields and select and radio and stuff like that, that gave us all of the keyboard behavior we needed just out of the box. We had to do none of that.
Very cool. And hello, Anthony.
Anthony's here. Hello.
Yay.
Let me show you one more cool thing with this. Oh my God, Anthony. Let's go back to the little demo link for that forum where we were just seeing just the forum. I want to show you one more thing, and this has nothing to do with keyboard navigability, but it is an accessibility feature. Can you click one of the form fields labels?
No.
So what happened there?
I can double click it. Wait.
So
an abusive or insulting. Oh, sorry, I just started.
I think you've
Grammarly.
Got
it's Grammarly. Yeah. But I was just that.
Yeah, you single click.
I cannot single click it. It only goes to the form fill.
So if you think about this, so this is actually intended, right? And I can show you how this was done. But if you think about it, this is actually a really good thing because what you've effectively done is when you click the label, the form field that the label is connected to gets focused. And this is really cool for, again, people with mobility issues that might struggle with precision, like tapping things like precisely. It's also really beneficial on mobile where things show up far, far smaller. So effectively what we've done is our label adds to the overall hitbox of the form field. And so that's a hugely important accessibility feature. And the way we did that, if you go back to the source code again, is the input has an ID, and then the label, you'll see that the ID here is name. And what's confusing is that there's also a name attribute that's also set to name. You can ignore the name attribute, but this label has this for. We can see it better, I think, with the select, because the select has the same functionality. There's that select element has an ID of job title, and above it there's a label with a for set to job titles. So the fact is that the for attribute matches the ID of the form field, and that's what connects the two.
Very
cool. Cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
That's keyboard navigation and a bit of other stuff besides. But yeah, do you have any questions about that?
Not about what this is doing. My biggest question, especially because like, and this is like what the like Latin thing that comes with the gibberish, but something that came to mind that is something that I really struggle with is the fact that if I was sent this form, I honestly would just skip the paragraph and just fill everything out without realizing what the form is for, because it's going to take me too long to read.
Sure.
So how would somebody, if they used some type of reader, would it still read the labels, or because the label goes and clicks the actual bubble, or would you be able to?
Okay. So
I hope you get what I'm saying or asking.
You're asking about screen readers, actually, yes. So because we did that whole for thing, that's another accessibility benefit, is you effectively name the field. And so when the screen reader user navigates to the field, they'll be told like edit text name, or like drop down job title developer, or something like that. Like the exact announcements differ based on what screen reader, but like you'll be told the name that you gave it because you linked up the label element. And so yeah, that like doing that whole for thing, like that is like required more or less. Like there's nuance there, but you basically need to do that for the for attribute thing to have an accessible form.
Got it.
Yeah. So I think that can actually segue us into using a screen reader. So I have been in the fortunate position of introducing people to screen readers many times. And what I found is that if you don't go about this in a very specific order, people will have a very overwhelming first impression of a screen reader. So what I'm going to do before I tell you how to even turn on your screen reader is I'm going to tell you how to turn off your screen reader. I'm going to give you your panic button, your escape hatches.
I'm laughing because I used to work at Verizon for many years, and it was right when the iPhones and Androids launched. And when people would turn it on, it was hysterical that they would go all the way to the store to get it to be turned off, which, believe me, it was annoying for me too. And it would be that overwhelmed, yet it was also really funny.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's very amusing, but it's one of those things where like, I've noticed people get this like very sour first impression of screen readers, and then they don't know, like they resolve to never touch it again, like with a 10-foot pole. And so we're going to be using the screen reader that is built into Mac OS, and that is called Voiceover. And Voiceover has 2 escape hatches I want you to remember.
Okay.
The first, if you don't want to turn off the screen reader, but you just want it to shut up immediately, hit Control.
Okay.
So Control should like always work. Control just that's the instant shut up voiceover command. All right. So what is the shut up voiceover command?
Control.
Awesome.
I want control back.
Yes, exactly. The other thing that you can do if you just want to turn off voiceover completely is so voiceover will have a little like readout. It'll have this like black display with white text on it that like says like it reads out what the screen reader is reading aloud. And in the top left corner, there's going to be a little white X. It looks like an ornamental detail. It doesn't look like it's a button. It's a close button. And if you click it, that will turn off voiceover completely. So those are your two escape hatches. If
Thank you.
And one thing I've noticed when doing this over streaming is that you basically need to use those escape hatches frequently. Otherwise, you or I are not going to be able to hear each other. So just be very over eager with your escape hatches.
Got it.
Cool. So with that in mind, are we ready to turn on voiceover?
Nervously, yes.
Okay. There's nothing to worry about. Just so the way I do this is I like to open up Spotlight Search, command space, and I like to type in. Oh, yeah. Can you type in accessibility? There we go. All right, and then that first option there, yep. And this is going to open up your accessibility settings. There are keyboard shortcuts to do all of this, but I find it easier to remember to go through the Spotlight Search. Again, Doom piles. In the left-hand nav, there is an option that says VoiceOver. Yep. And there's a checkbox that says Enable VoiceOver. And it's going to think for a bit, especially because it's the first time. Use VoiceOver. There's an yeah, go ahead. We'll think for a bit.
It scared me.
Okay, I can't seem to hear it, but that's fine.
It talks faster too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very fast. Okay.
I think my spoken content is sped up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, maybe not. Okay. What would you like me to do? This is exciting. Is there a way to share my voice? Or my screens?
Yeah, if you can do that, that might be helpful. Because I can't hear it. I don't think the viewers can hear it. And that doesn't... I don't know like when to start talking. Like I don't know when you've used your escape hatch. I don't know if StreamYard lets you share audio, but
I will look really quick. It also I see what you mean and why people want it to go away easily.
Yeah.
That was overwhelming is a very, very good way of saying it. I don't see a way to share audio, but hey.
So folks at home can follow along with their own screen readers, but in that case, then because I don't know when it's actually talking versus when you've used an escape hatch, I'm gonna need you to like explicitly tell me. We're gonna basically I want to like queue up an exercise at a time, if that makes sense.
Cool.
So we're gonna I'm gonna introduce you today to a few different ways to navigate a web page using a screen reader. The first one that we're gonna do is just simply tabbing, right? This is no different from when you were just tabbing for keyboard navigation, right? But this time you'll have a screen reader just also telling you some things. So all of your shortcuts, like all of your arrow keys and space bars and enters and stuff like that, your tabs, your shift tabs, it's all the same. Just now we have a screen reader. So let's go ahead and do that for a bit.
It is definitely like it's reading it out loud. It just read that it is which Google Chrome profile I'm using and that I'm in a text box.
Yeah.
Ooh, to display a list of options, press Control Option space. Ooh. It, I'm glad that I can see this at the same time because it is very confusing, at
Mhm.
least if I were just listening without the context of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like if it were somebody that maybe a bit more experienced with not being able to see
Mhm.
it, that they would be able to get used to the way it's
Yeah.
describing something.
Yes, and real day-to-day users of screen readers will have this like much faster than you or I might when
Mhm,
testing. And that's a thing to call out. Like you just get more used to this, and you can
mhm.
better discern what's being said. Additionally, some folks aren't hearing their screen reader aloud, but rather they're using a peripheral called a refreshable Braille display. This is a row of like Braille dots that like raise or lower based on what the screen reader is reading out. Um, and so, yeah, some people aren't even hearing this aloud. They're just like they're feeling it.
Hmm,
So
interesting. How would they be able to feel it then? Is that something that's like a different device?
yeah, yeah. It's so I said peripheral. So that's like it's a device like it's a piece of hardware you'd plug into your computer,
Mm, hmm,
and yeah, the dots would raise or lower. So
that's
um,
really cool.
I want to say like a quarter of day in, day out screen reader users use refreshable Braille displays. So it's not an insignificant amount by any stretch.
Let me, there we go. Braille? Oh, it ain't actually.
There we go.
Whoa. It's definitely not very friendly on Google.
Okay.
I say that as it like won't let you scroll and highlight something else. It was just pulling it back up here. Even
Yeah.
though like I was wanting to scroll and then like click on something. It wouldn't even go down here. It just kept pulling it back up to
Hmm.
here. And it wasn't and I have the same type of thing happen to me before on voice to text too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so okay, so that's that kind of tabbing that you saw moving the focus.
Mhm.
Again, focus is where your cursor basically is, like your keyboard cursor. It's the same for a screen reader. Now, remember that focus is only for interactive things. Things actually, even specifically, focus is really only for things that you can interact with your keyboard. Like the
Mhm.
idea is, it's whatever element would start receiving keyboard events. But anything you can do with your mouse, you should be able to do with your keyboard. And so, therefore, we could broadly speaking say that focus goes to interactive things. But if you think about it, like you're gonna miss content on this page if the only thing you can do is go between interactive elements, right?
Mhm.
You could go to the links, but you can't read the rest of the paragraph. You can't read the heading, for instance.
Right.
So we need ways to access anything on our page: static content, interactive content, stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
So the next screen reader navigation mode I'm going to introduce to you is called the virtual cursor. And
Ooh.
here's how you're going to do this. When you turn your screen reader back on, you'll just kind of click into the page once. I find I sometimes have to like highlight the text a bit, or like highlight a piece of text to get started. But then you'll do Control, Option, and then the left and right arrow keys.
Which ones again?
Control, Option, and then the left and right arrow keys. So you're holding down Control and Option, and then you're going to use like both of them, Control and Option, and then you'll use the left and right keys. Is it dinging at you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
And
it's because
just
your virtual cursor got trapped in a radio group. To get around this, I usually start by highlighting a little piece of text or something like that.
sorry,
Yeah.
say that one more time.
Oh,
You get to get out of
I,
that, you get
I usually just like highlight a piece of text with my mouse or something like that. And that usually gets me. Yeah. Okay. Now let's try Control, Option, arrow keys.
Oh. Okay, that was fun.
Yeah, but you can imagine that if you were reading something bigger, right, like a whole blog or a news article or something like that, that'd be kind of inconvenient, right? To have to keep like progressing
I'm
the cursor.
actually want to try this now.
Okay. I encourage that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I know you guys can't hear this. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Pretty good.
So it reading the title of this post that I made is star. What is a Devril? What is an avocado? Avocado.
Yeah. So this is
I love it.
Yeah. Well, so but this speaks to a bit of like the user experience of using a screen reader, right? Because like I don't want to say don't use emojis, right? But if a screen reader announces emojis, like it can really clutter up the experience, right? And so this is where folks will advise like find a way to like cut down on emoji usage. Like don't have a whole wall of emojis because that can be an absolute pain to get through, right? In this case, it's star. What is a DevRel and what's with the avocados? Avocado. And maybe as far as screen reader users are concerned, like you could have been fine with just simply avocado at the end,
Yeah, and it's interesting that it did the stars because that was, and this is probably my need to look at the article anyway. It should be bolded. Or yeah, I think it's bolded or a title or something. And it could have been just when I imported it, I didn't realize it. And it definitely is something that I see like only doing like a few.
Yeah.
Because like even doing this, if it says avocado, but I think it's also like, I like that thing though. I like the claps. What happens if I'm switching screens now.
Okay.
What do I select over here?
What do you think's going to happen? Yeah, I don't know how StreamYard is on accessibility.
I don't.
Okay. Oh, hello. I don't actually know where your cursor is. Do you want me to spoil it for you?
It doesn't actually. Just a sec. Oh, thank you. It makes it hard to talk and think at the same time. Yeah. It doesn't. And what I was trying to see if it would do is read that comment. Yeah. And it would not read the comment, even highlighting it. I ended up making my screen go full screen because I was trying to see if I could make
Mm,
it by like showing it if it did it. And that's very
yeah.
interesting to think about how not all applications are accessible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as far as and do you want to put Anthony's comment on the screen again so we can kind of talk through
Yes.
this? Um,
Yes.
I am pretty sure that the way that this announces is and clapping hands, don't clapping hands, don't clapping hands. This, sorry, I think I missed the do clapping hands, this clapping hands thing. Now things get even worse if you've specified like a skin tone modifier for the emojis because that's going to be
Oh,
I think that would be and clapping hands with white skin tone modifier, don't clapping hands with white skin tone modifier, something like that. Like hugely, hugely cluttered.
interesting. Oh,
And
wow.
right, so you can see how instantly what is cute for those of us who are sighted and don't have to use a screen reader to access
Right.
that content. Like that's cute, right? But it's introduced so much clutter to the point, like to the fact where it becomes like very hard to actually decipher what's being said. Um, so yeah, it's perhaps a more accessible version of that meme could have involved just putting like one clapping emoji at the like either at the beginning or at the end, maybe at both, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Interesting. This is making me think a lot about like, and you and I talked about this a bit on our very first stream of a screen reader versus text to speech.
yeah,
And even text to speeches have a hard time with emojis. And yet it's like how, oh, this is so complicated. I'm torn. That and I really do love emojis. So
so I like them too, right? But I think the answer is like it's not don't use emojis, it's use emojis in moderation.
yeah.
Which is maybe disheartening to like hear, but at very least it means that like we're not introducing gobs of clutter to a screen reader user's experience.
Yes.
And I want to like express that I use emojis, I tweet out emojis, like I include them in my semantics announcements, right? Like this is absolutely not me putting the ban hammer down, putting the kibosh
I
down
know
on
because you used a good emoji that I want to start using for the location. I was going to tell you
ah
that. I was like, that's a best practice. I got to use that.
mm,
Um, but I can see how it's just making me think. Like it's just kind of
yeah.
crazy how when you don't realize these things, just to be
Mhm.
very cognizant about them.
Yeah.
Um,
And so a lot of folks aren't aware of this. And so a lot of the like trending memes on Twitter are very emoji centric. Like a while back there was a meme, you probably saw this one, the red flags meme on Twitter.
mm-mm.
Okay. So the idea would be like you describe a behavior that you find problematic in some way. And then afterwards, you would fill the rest of the tweet, whatever remains in your character limit, with red flag emojis.
Ew.
So it's like it's like when they use TypeScript instead of JavaScript, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, for instance. Um,
Oh,
but
okay.
but the issue is that screen readers, first of all, that's a ton of emojis, tons of clutter, right? And these tweets were everywhere. But second of all, there's nothing in the computer that says that that's specifically supposed to be a red flag emoji. In fact, the official name was like triangular flag on post. And so it wasn't even clear that it was supposed to be a red flag. It was, it would be like when they use TypeScript instead of JavaScript, triangular flag on post, triangular flag on post, triangular flag on post, triangular flag on post, you know? Um, and so a lot of Twitter memes are emoji centric in a way that increase clutter and don't even really help in comprehension of what is actually supposed to be referred to. Mike, hello. I know
Hello,
Mike.
hello. And Ben,
Yes.
like now one day a video or a speech or a blog, something, a one day idea for you, Ben, of screen reader versus text to speech.
I gotcha.
because I would watch that. And I think that's
Okay.
something that I would share a lot about. And I say it, I think this is a big, and I would love a call out on this. Like, I think it's something that when these ideas pop up for me, I'm like, oh, let me share it with the person that is like, does this, like, this is their jam.
Mm,
Because I'm like, I could write it, you know, it's something I'd be very curious about, but
yeah,
it's not going to have the same impact than somebody that's like in that space.
sure.
So I'm curious, like, how that works, because
Yeah.
that's new for me
Well, so
too.
maybe we can continue our exploration of screen readers then. So one of the things that it's been doing is as you navigate to different things on the page, it'll tell you what kind of thing that is, right? And that
Mhm,
itself is a key difference between screen readers and text to speech, where
mhm,
text to speech will just say submit, but a screen reader will tell you it's a submit button, for instance,
mhm.
or this right here is a link. Um, and so, yeah, so we had just finished kind of talking about the virtual cursor, but I wanted to give you a kind of shortcut so that you wouldn't have to keep like control option arrowing throughout the page. And this is what we're going to call continuous reading mode. And so continuous
Oh,
reading mode is control option A. So let's go ahead
okay.
and turn voiceover back on and
I'm
then just put your cursor somewhere and do control option A.
I have to turn it back on.
Yep,
And you said control option A?
that's correct.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah? Tell me more.
Um, it's definitely something that, so to do it as a comparison, I use an app that's text to speech
Mm-hmm.
called Natural Reader, I believe. And I do like it, but it doesn't always know where to select. And it will a lot of times like read this and then
Mm-hmm.
skip down here.
Mm. Interesting.
And it makes it really difficult because, for example, I build all of mine in Notion. And when I was going through here and doing it with text to speech, it won't read the first line. So
Mm.
I put a random first line here so that way when I'm listening it back to myself to make sure that I'm not missing something because I am really dyslexic, that it's reading the first
Yeah.
paragraph.
So
So,
So screen readers are typically used by people who are blind or low vision, but I have also heard of screen readers, not even text to speech, screen readers being used by dyslexic people as well for very similar reasons of just being able to like read content aloud and get like all the information about links and stuff like that. This may be something worth considering for you if you find that this is working better than your current text to speech tools.
yeah, because I do really like the text to speech and the our comment about emojis has really made me think about emojis and the
Mhm.
fact that I do use them as my bullet points a lot. But at the same time, hearing how they're describing the screen reader or like the emoji itself, it's like, okay, cool. How are like, is that going to make a big impact if it's not the exact same visual representation as it
Sure.
is?
Yeah.
So, like some of them, like this emoji is considered tears of joy, whereas that's what
Mhm.
it's called. And I was like, I've never seen anyone use that of tears of joy. So it's been like a laughy emoji.
Right.
So in my mind, and I'd be curious for people that experience this, if context, how much context goes into it, and how often someone may work on
Mhm.
consuming this content, or if they skip through content, like what is that user experience like?
Yeah, and a lot of emojis are very contextual. There's one example. There's one emoji that depicts a face that's like blowing steam out of their nose,
Oh yeah.
and So many people in the West will use that as like an anger emoji.
Mhm.
But this is actually, if you look at like the name of the emoji, it's like determined face, because the notion of like having like steam coming out your nose. In Japan, from what I understand, and Japan is where like the first set of emojis came from. Like that's kind
Mhm.
of the standard cartoony depiction of determination, and so like people are using a thing like an emoji that looks a certain way in a way that doesn't quite connect to the underlying name of the emoji. And there's
Mhm.
cultural connotations there too. So a screen reader user is going to hear like determined face, which isn't quite the same as like face that's like steaming with anger. That's the
Yes.
one. Yes, that's
Yes.
the
I
one.
had it. I've interesting. Interesting. This is so fascinating.
Hmm.
And I know we're getting close on time,
Yeah.
and I just want to say that Ben, I feel like you need to be a monthly visitor because you just teach us so much
Oh.
about as we're developing things, like, and it's not just like a developer aspect of it. I feel like accessibility is something we need to think about
Hmm.
throughout everything that we're building, even as it comes down to like APIs.
Yeah. Um,
So now I'm like mind boggled again.
I'm down to be a monthly guest. But with this little bit of time we've got, can I show you one more thing with screen readers?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then we'll definitely I think in months to come we'll start talking a lot more about semantic HTML, semantic markup, because I think that's a huge part of a strong foundation for accessibility. But let's go back to the Dev2 page, and we can use that as our grounds here. So what I'm about to introduce you to in VoiceOver, it's a feature called the Rotor. Different screen readers all have their own implementations for something like this. I
Mhm.
think that VoiceOvers is the easiest to use, especially for us sighted testers. But the idea is it's going to be a way to navigate between different elements of a similar type. Um, and so that could be like going from heading to heading or link to link, button to button.
Oh.
And so in JAWS, NVDA, Narrator, those are other screen readers. They all have keyboard shortcuts for this, but I find that VoiceOvers is going to be the easiest because it packs everything into one nice, easy shortcut. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to turn VoiceOver back on, and then you're going to do Control Option U. Oh ho ho! Uh, Go ahead and do the up and down arrow keys a few times.
Hi.
Yeah. Hello.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh,
I didn't.
go ahead and hit up and down a few times.
Okay.
So yeah, you're skipping through the page, going from link to link.
Sorry. One more time.
You're skipping from the page, going from link to link, right?
Yes.
And so you can
Yes.
imagine, if someone's included a bunch of links that are all called click here or read more, well, this is a very valid way to navigate the page that is completely taking those links out of context.
It is.
And so this is one
Interesting.
of the reasons that like accessibility advocates will recommend that you keep your links like very like specific and to the point, right? Like and descriptive. Your links should describe where they go, because in a mode like this, you don't know where they're going to go. You don't even know the surrounding context.
So on that note, if I scroll all the way down, if I were to put this link in where what's with the avocado
Mhm.
and linked it there, they would at least know that that link has something to do with
Yeah.
what's with the avocado.
Yes. Yeah.
Instead of click here, then click
Hmm.
here just would mean we have no idea. But if it's
Yeah.
like actually embedded with the
Mhm.
text of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's real quick hop back into the voiceover and hit the left and right arrow keys to go to different panels. And the panel that I want to especially highlight is the headings panel.
Okay. And it's Control Option U.
Yeah. Nice. Here we go. So, can you hear me, by the way? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So, yeah, what this is doing is this is giving us all of our H1s through H6s on the page. And
oh, that's cool.
yeah, and it even tells you which heading level, right? So the one that your cursor's on right now is an H1. And if you were to go down one, it would take you to an H2. And
now I want to go. I would say the only thing that, especially if people are having a hard time with visualization, but can still see, is it would be cool if it scrolled to where it is on the page.
Sure. Yeah.
This is so dope.
Yeah. You can hit enter, by the way, if you want to have it just like if you want to close the rotor and scroll down to it. There you go. And so, yeah, now we're starting to see how the elements that we use impact how this experience is presented to assistive technology, right? And so, folks who are not sighted, like, you and I, we're sighted. If we're looking at a page and we want to get a piece of information on that page, we might skim through the page until we find a heading that seems roughly right and then start reading more closely. But a screen reader, when you just use the virtual cursor, is inherently linear, right? And so this is effectively giving screen reader users that same skimming functionality. So, yeah. Unfortunately,
I know you have to jump. Thank you. And we look forward to having you on again soon. And bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.